Mr. Chairman, we are now recording the meeting and streaming live to YouTube. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome MetroPlan to the MetroPlan Orlando MAC meeting. My name is John Dallas, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly for us in the room and those listening online. As we continue to meet in person, all committee members are required to be physically present here in the MetroPlan Orlando boardroom for purposes of achieving a quorum. Staff will continue to stream our meetings online for public access. By the way, silence your phones. And we will begin this morning with an invocation by Commissioner Ramos, and then lead us in the pledge with Mayor Gardner, if you'd like to stand.
Father God, thank you once again for entrusting us with your cities here in Central Florida. I ask that you give us your wisdom and discernment. I ask that you give us, help us make decisions that are best for your citizens here. And may we honor you in all we say this morning. In God's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, this morning I asked everyone, sorry, talk about the phones. I do ask that all committee members wait to be recognized to speak and to activate your microphones before speaking and turning them back off when you are complete. As a reminder, the microphone is turned on and off by pressing the blue button, the one with the little talking face icon on it, located on the screen in front of you. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public participating virtually who want to speak will use the raise hands feature on the Zoom screen. If attending by phone, you can hit *9 to request to be recognized. We also accepted comments by email and phone message before the meeting. The guidelines for the public comment are posted in MetroPlan Orlando.org/virtual meetings. We want this and all future meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablet, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact MetroPlan Orlando. And with that, we will now have Ms. Larson for our agenda review.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. We had a successful webinar on June 4th and also on with the traffic safety advocate, Melissa Wandell. For those of you who could not join, I recommend watching our recording on our YouTube channel. Likewise, the June 13th video from Bike Walk Central Florida's Wheel of Achievement Awards featuring the Blue Zones researcher, Dan Burden. He was also a part of our Vision Zero speaker series. This video is also available on our YouTube channel. And in fact, we made it even easier for you to access because we've created a Vision Zero Central Florida playlist. We're going to take a little bit of a hiatus from the speaker series while we work through the rest of our Vision Zero plan approvals, which will be coming to your cities and towns. Be on the lookout for that as it comes to your commissions and councils. But we'll be back in the fall, likely with a panel to discuss speed reduction and safety. On June 18th, we also had our virtual public meeting on the Transportation Improvement Program. And that video is also available on our YouTube channel. Jason Sartorio gave the presentation for you during our earlier June meeting. And Taylor Laurent will be discussing with you with the new tip with you shortly. As 2 housekeeping notes, our office will be closed next Thursday, hence why we're having our meeting today for the July 4th holiday. Also, the MetroPlan Orlando board meeting on July 12th will begin at 8 a.m. instead of the usual 9 a.m. To accommodate for some local government meetings. There are no changes to the printed agenda. And now for the safety moment, Mr. Mike Wilson usually delivers the safety moment. However, he's at an NCU TCD meeting. So instead, we'll be hearing from Mr. Alex Stroggard. Alex.
It's quite the acronym. Y'all might not be familiar with that, but Mike Wilson from our team, kind of a longtime kind of bike ped advocate, safety expert, does serve on a national panel for the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and he serves on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Subcommittee for that. So He's hard at work out on the West Coast this week, serving in that role and bringing his insights from all of our experience and work here in Central Florida. So again, I'll be kind of pinch hitting for the safety moment and visions and status updates from our Vision Zero action plan have kind of been a fixture of committee agendas for the past 12 months as we've been developing local and our regional Vision Zero action plan. So kind of a twofer today. We're going to use the safety moment really kind of as an advertisement and let you kind of take on some other core agenda action items today. But again, we have been developing a regional safety action plan at the same time as each of your local jurisdictions, counties, and cities have been developing localized action plan, top-down, bottom-up approach, hoping to really encapsulate all of our safety needs and challenges. So as we move forward, we have a game plan, but also a recognition of the needs and situation at hand so we can start strategizing long-term funding situation. So the situation, where are we at today, kind of a present day? Our vision is zero, but unfortunately, that's not the case day to day. 41% of our traffic deaths occur on 2% of our roadways. So through this Vision Zero action planning process, we've been able to target a network so we can focus our near-term efforts there, but also lessons learned and take that context to other corridors in the area. Also, something that we've discovered statistically, kind of looking at those crash records, almost half of them have to do with human behavior, whether that is intoxication, speed, distracted or aggressive driving. So careless and reckless behavior is a major contributor, the human. And until we're out of the kind of driving decision-making process, we need to kind of focus our efforts there so that you'll see that as you come to the plan that we're developing. We will be releasing the plan here in a couple weeks, and you'll be first getting that really fresh off the press as soon as it's ready. But it's going to focus on continued high emphasis planning and analytics, looking at the data and using that to kind of guide our decision-making process, as well as our public engagement process. We learned a lot. We heard stories, but we also know we need targeted outreach and participation based on some of those behaviors and other factors that we're seeing. And there's also an investment side. There's a behavioral side, but there's also an investment capital engineering countermeasures. So the plan identifies near and short-term countermeasures on our current infrastructure. There's already investment happening today, but there's going to need to be more to get us to zero. And the plan will be documenting that at a regional level. So again, in the next couple of weeks, you will be receiving a regional Metro Plan Orlando's Vision Zero action plan. It should be complementing and at a higher level, encapsulating regional need, where your local plans are going to get a little bit deeper into the network. We've identified those corridors of regional critical significance, and that's what you're going to be seeing here. We are going to give you about a month, 3-4 weeks of feedback time. So we'll be sending that out and giving you an opportunity to read through that. And then at your next meeting cycle at August, we're going to give you a little summer break here, but at your next meeting, actually in September, we'll be asking for your approval of that. So while we're releasing the plan and putting that out for public and our partner review, my staff's actually going to be pursuing additional resources as Mike Wilson presented at our last Vision Zero status update. We're going to be pursuing a supplemental planning grant to dig deeper into the data, to get boots on the ground on those corridors, to really start developing safety concepts. I think we've really just scratched the surface in some cases. So we're going to be, pursuing additional resources so we can try to expedite the situation. But again, be on the lookout. You'll be hearing from liaisons and our other social media channels about the publication, the release of our regional plan. But we appreciate your participation here, but also I know you've been hearing a lot about kind of Vision Zero in your localized commission chambers. So again, thank you for being a champion. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to field them now or of course after the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. I believe it's time for the roll call.
Good morning. I'll ask all committee members to keep your microphones muted until call. Please say here or present. David, DeCiccio, Dowless,
Here.
Foraker,
Here.
Gardner,
Here.
Guthrie,
Here.
Henson,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
McCann,
Here.
Ramos,
Present.
Sackett, Slated, Colbert for Smith.
Here.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call. And for the record, we have received requests for excused absences from Mayor DeCiccio, Councilman David, and Commissioner Sackett.
Do we have a motion to approve excuses?
So moved.
Mayor Henson, second? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. That was Mayor McCann with the second. All right, we will now hear public comments on action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold public comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
No hands raised online, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. And do we have any members in the public attending in person that wish to make a public comment?
We have not received any.
All right. And are there any written comments that were submitted?
There are none.
All right. Well, let's move right along then. We will now go to our agency partner reports. And first we have from FDOT, Ms. Beckman. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm going to be a little different today. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but I wanted to point out something that's coming up to you. So we are going to talk about our 2055 Florida Transportation Plan. You've been hearing Ms. Laurent talk about the MTP, or your Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This is Florida's version. So the 2055 Florida Transportation Plan update will be a comprehensive statewide blueprint guiding Florida's 30-year transportation future. The FTP will lay the foundation for investments in FDOT's work program. It's updated every 5 years, and this plan will be developed through steering committee guidance, focus group input, and comprehensive community engagement, both public and partner engagement. This plan will be developed over the next 18 months for an adoption date in November of 2025. I apologize. I forgot to hit that. I turned the mic on and forgot to go forward. So it will be adopted in November 2025, just a month prior to Metro plans. The 2055 FTP will be guided by a streamlined steering committee in collaboration with FDOT to provide input that will guide the development of the goals, objectives, and policies that make up the plan. Commissioner and Metro Plan Orlando board member Maya Uribe is actually a part of the steering committee, so that is a good contact for you guys if you need to speak to her about anything. We'll be talking about those focus groups in just a moment. The Florida Transportation Plan is more than just a plan, of course. It's a forum that aims to connect communities, policies, and programs across the state. The Florida Transportation Plan is a collaborative effort of state, regional, and local transportation partners in the public and private sectors. We have divided Florida up into 5 regions for the development of the 2055 Transportation Plan to better understand the needs of our diverse communities and tailor the characteristics and needs of each region. This also helps to provide a framework at the local level so that we have better cohesion in strategies across municipalities and jurisdictional boundaries. As you can see on the screen, we have 3 phases: visioning, statewide goals and regional objectives, as well as implementation framework and plan development. The FTP will have statewide goals and regional objectives, empowering our communities to develop local strategies through the FTP's framework. Here at FDOT, communities are at the center of everything we do, and we will be holding multiple engagement opportunities throughout the FTP update, including statewide webinars and regional workshops throughout the state. And here's the part that I think is most interesting for you. We are also going to have a great way for you to participate. We are going to have 5 focus groups that provide a forum for more targeted discussion on statewide goals and regional objectives, and to provide input to the steering committee that is working directly with FDOT. The focus groups are organized around our 5 major topic areas in our FDOT compass. They are safety, resilient infrastructure, economic development, supply chain, technology, and workforce development. Input on the goals and objectives and policies that make up this plan is critical in achieving an implementation vision for our future transportation networks. If you are interested in participating in any of these focus groups, any of the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them, I do want to point out to you that coming up very quickly are the deadlines to register for the first round. We're going to be doing rounds of discussions of these focus groups. The first rounds are here in July. I'm going to give an email to Ms. Larson here shortly to send to you with all of these, so don't worry, but they start July 9th with safety. At 9 a.m. in the morning. Economic development supply chain will be on the 10th at 2 p.m. Resilient infrastructure is on the 11th at 2 p.m. Technology will be on the 18th, July 18th at 2 p.m. And workforce development will be on the 23rd at 9 a.m. These are all virtual, so you do need to register prior to in order to get that link, but you are welcome to attend one or all. The slide above shows the estimated timeline, our overall timeline for the FTP. You can see that the planned timing periods for different steering committee meetings, focus groups, and public engagement opportunities. The public comment opportunity from September to October of 2025, with a final adoption date later in November of 2025. So we're asking you to help us develop the 2055 Florida Transportation Plan. You can visit floridaftp.com. There's a new website. It's a virtual room. It has a lot of different links and a lot of information for you. And you can either participate through the website and commentary, or you can participate in a webinar or choose to join one of the regional workshops or focus groups. I've placed cards at each of your seats today that has the QR code that you can go ahead and reach out to that virtual room and register for any of those focus groups or to get more information. And at this time, that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to hear them.
Any questions about 2055? That's a long time.
It's a lot. Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure we're any good. Many of us may not be here.
Speak for yourself.
Anyone questions? All right, thanks so much. All right, next up from Lynx, we have Ms. Witten. Welcome.
Good morning. Just a couple brief updates. Lynx ridership remains around 60,000 average daily ridership. We did have our highest ridership day on May 3rd, and that was 64,083 riders, and that's our highest ridership since COVID as ridership returns. And then we are going to be holding some information sessions next week for some service efficiencies that would take place. They're proposed, they would take place August 25th. The first session will be July 1st on Monday at Kissimmee City Hall from 1 to 2 p.m. We'll also be at Sanford City Hall from 1 to 2 p.m. on Monday. And then on July 2nd from 1 to 2 p.m. at Lynx Central Station. And then there will be a virtual option from 6 to 7 p.m. on the 2nd as well. And then it'll wrap up with a public workshop and hearing on July 9th at Lynx Central Station. The workshop will be from 4 to 5 p.m. followed by the hearing from 5 to 6 p.m. And so unless there are any questions, that concludes my update.
Anyone? No? All right, next
you.
on our list, Mr. Fine from the Turnpike. Welcome.
Good morning, committee members. Ciaosi Fine with the Turnpike. One quick update for today. So we have the widening, the Turnpike has a widening project on the Seminole Expressway, State Road 417, that goes from Aloma to State Road 434. So for that project, currently it's under the design build. So what that means is currently that project is under final design and construction. I just bring that project up because it just started that phase currently. So we should have a clearer date of when that, the construction should be finalized for that portion of the Seminole Expressway. But with that being said, that is the end of my report.
All right, any questions? Thank you very much. Next, we have action items. First up is approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections? We have a motion to approve. Moved by Mayor Sladek, second by Mayor Foraker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. All right, next up, we will have the approval of the 2025-2029 TIP. Ms. Laurent, welcome.
Good morning. So Jason Sartorio is traveling today, so I'll be filling in to present the Transportation Improvement Program for Adoption today. This is the fiscal year 2025 through 2029 document. And you'll find additional information about this under tab 2 of your agenda packets. So to dive right in, again, the purpose of the MTP is to identify all federal and state funded transportation projects over the next 5 years throughout our region. And it does include locally funded and Central Florida Expressway projects for informational purposes for that high level information. And it is updated annually and is consistent with our adopted prioritized project list, with the most recent adopted one being July of 2023 last year. There are 11 sections within the TIP to organize all the projects. None of these have changed since the presentation that Jason gave to you last month. And of the projects that we have, all 513 are found within each of these particular elements. And as you can see, we have a lot of projects going on within the region. 280 are federal, state, or turnpike funded projects, which represent about $5.4 billion worth of funding over the next 5 years. And this does not include the additional project investment through Central Florida Expressway Authority, which is an additional $4.1 billion applied to transportation projects. Nor does it include the $1 billion of locally funded transportation project improvements. The pie chart here on the screen does break down this funding by the different categories within the TIP, those 11 categories that we mentioned on the previous slide. And then based on our region's significant population size, we do get special TMA funds, federal funds, which we can use for ops system highway improvements. This includes 59 MetroPlan Orlando funded improvements within the current TIP, totaling about $185 million over the next 5 years. And the table here displays how we break those out between complete streets, TSMO, Transportation Systems Management and Operations, bicycle and pedestrian, and transit projects. And there were a few small changes that were made to the draft TIP between the preview that you saw at your last meeting and the final version that we're requesting your recommendation for adoption on today. The first being at the request of FDOT, the addition of the date of our next federal certification was added to page 14. At the request of the City of Orlando, the length of the Corinne Drive project was adjusted to better reflect what is anticipated to be done with that work. That's on page 40. At the request of Osceola County, a few changes were made. The first being to the Old Lake Wilson Road project, again, a project length minor update. And then for the Jones Road and Lake Toho Pond Trail projects, those are locally funded projects. So those cost estimates were updated to make sure they accurately reflected the local funding that Osceola County is putting towards those work efforts. And then we did make some improvements to the line work on our TIP online viewer to make sure that our projects were very easily symbolized and understood by the general public. And speaking of them, we did have, as Sarah mentioned, our TIP public meeting on June 18th that was hosted virtually on Zoom starting at 11:30 to 1. And this year we did have a few changes to that format. So we had Keith Slater with FDOT present the Corridors program and I-4 and Moving Florida Forward projects. Miss Amy Beckman, who's with us here today, presented on the state highway system, and Miles O'Keefe from Lynx presented on some of the transit projects throughout the region. So we thank each of our panelists who are here today, and also our partners who assisted with the Q&A section of the TIP public meeting that helped make it a great success. So the public meeting was followed by a very engaging Q&A session with topics including transit needs throughout the region, the Safe Routes to School program, use of roundabouts, pedestrian safety concerns, as well as specific project questions. One thing I want to make sure we highlight from Jason's hard work, we did receive several positive comments, both from the public and our private agency partners, about our TIP online viewer, that made it much easier to be able to see project information and be able to see where they are geographically as well. So we were excited to receive that feedback. So with the public meeting being closed, I do want to mention that the comment period for the TIP is still open. So public comments can be submitted through Monday, July 8th. Unless there are any questions this morning, we are asking for your recommendation of approval of the fiscal year 25 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program as it's been presented today.
Are there any questions?
Just got one easy small one. So I saw that there was an aviation. CO and Sanford airports, like around that area that y'all are looking at. I mean, what does that really entail, aviation project?
Mhm. So I need to look at the specific item to know exactly where it is, but aviation.
Oh, it just had
projects
that on
generally-
that piece of
Oh, the
pie,
pie
the
chart.
first pie chart?
Yes, so those generally represent capital improvement projects related to transportation, so updating, refreshing the pavement on the taxiways, those kinds of improvements.
Oh, so that comes out of the taxiways for the planes?
So
Comes out of that budget?
yeah, I'll be clear. So the Transportation Improvement Program includes all federal and state transportation funds in our area. So as it relates to the aviation projects, our commercial service airports, GOA, Sanford, and Sanford, Orlando Sanford, in the Sanford area, excuse me, receive federal funds from the Federal Aviation Authority, the FAA. Those funds, similar to Lynx, they're encapsulated in our Transportation Improvement Program, kind of as a general program fund, and then they are more specifically defined and budgeted for in that agency's capital improvement program or annual budget. But you will see, like as Taylor mentioned, rehabbing, runways and taxiways at GOA and at Sanford, our commercial service airports within in the tip. The focus of our core work is obviously the surface transportation system, kind of within the metropolitan planning purview. But the tip does include an accounting of all federal and state projects.
One, thank you for the education. Second question is, does MCO get any of that tax money also, or is it just Sanford Orlando Airport?
It's going to both,
Goes to both.
both of the commercial service airports, and that's driven primarily by formula. The state of Florida developed ports or modal plans, so they have airport capital improvement programs at the state level, and they're looking at all commercial service airports and kind of the hierarchy of how those are serving, and then they are deploying resources, investment at the statewide level. We're not at the MPO level. We're not prioritizing aviation projects. Our commercial service airports are working directly through existing channels at Florida Department of Transportation, their modal development crew, to prioritize that investment, but it's represented, accounted for in our tip.
Beautiful. Thanks. Thanks for the education.
Certainly.
Now I know.
All right. No other questions? We have a motion to approve TI 2025-29 TIP.
So moved.
Mayor McCann, second. Foraker, is that right?
Sure.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. Thank you so much. Next up, we have the 2030, 2040 PPL, and we have Slade Downs. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mac. I'll be walking you through our annual prioritized project list update, as just mentioned. The PDF for that document is loaded onto the screens in front of you for your reference, if you'd like to take a look. At our last meeting, I gave you all a preview of the preview version, and now I'm bringing the final version for adoption. So it won't spend too much time on background, because I don't want to repeat too much from our last meeting, but long the short of it is that the PPL is kind of like the on-deck circle for projects that are looking for funding. So the updates that have been incorporated into the PPL since last time you saw it are based on feedback we received from all of our advisory committees, as well as all of your staffs. The kind of highlights of changes that we got, some updates to local project limits on the complete streets list, as well as some administrative changes to the off-system construction assistance project list, and then a couple administrative changes to the regional transit projects list. Those were all based on feedback we got from technical advisory committee members. And one thing I want to highlight as well is that because need is prioritized in the MTP, the rankings of those projects did not change in any of the lists. So short and sweet, going to be asking for recommendation of approval of the 2030-2040 PPL today. Be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Mayor Foraker, second. Mayor Henson, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, please show that adopted. Thanks so much. All right, we are now going to our presentations, and we have two this morning. The first one, 2050 MTP. Ms. Laurent, welcome back.
All right, well, this one isn't an action item, information only presentation this time. So I'll be providing an update on our 2050 MTP and its development. So currently we're about a quarter of the way into the development of this long range plan. And we have a lot of moving pieces at the moment, which I'll be providing more specific updates on in a moment. But in terms of our goals and objectives and identification of future trends, those are all wrapping up right now as we dive even deeper into our multimodal needs assessments. But we are ultimately on track to be able to adopt the 2050 MTP by December of 2025. So that's always good news for me. So getting into those project-specific updates, our public participation plan is complete and it has been published on our website as of 20 minutes ago. Really excited to be able to say that one now. And our existing conditions and area profile technical report is also complete and up on our website for you to peruse at your leisure. At some of our previous meetings, we've talked about the goals and objectives that have been developed for the 2050 MTP. Those have been refined based on the feedback that you provided along with our other advisory committees. And today we'll be spending a little more time talking about that next step of indicators. So what are we going to use to measure our progress towards achieving those goals and objectives? So we'll come back to that towards the latter end of the presentation today. I mentioned those drivers of change, the future trends, the draft report for all of the trends that we're anticipating to influence our transportation growth over the next 25 years has been published on our website for you to review. This is the draft chapter 8 of the MTP. It explores those in-depth trends, which again influence how we can grow. And this describes a variety of trends and projections that in the region that we are expecting to inform our policy and investment decision-making through 2050. So a few other technical elements that we have going on. We've been communicating with the FDOT Central Florida Regional Planning Model, another 5-letter acronym for the day, working with them on the socioeconomic background data. So that's looking at the housing, employment type information used to develop traffic projections. We will be communicating with them more over the next few weeks to address some comments that we've provided on that draft data. The transit vision plan for the region is wrapping up, and you will be able to see a link to that final report in your next meeting's agenda in September. And then our freight planning assessments are also underway with a few industry and public agency workshops being planned for the next several weeks here in July. More information about those will be published on our website as soon as those are scheduled. Then we have a few other ongoing efforts at the moment, including our Vision Zero action plans, health assessments, housing assessments, and a few environmental evaluations. As those become a little more developed, I'll be providing more specific updates about those items at future meetings as well. And then I believe I mentioned this back at your previous meeting, but I'm excited about it, so I'm going to say it again today. Our TSMO and active transportation needs assessments have been completed, so those are being directly incorporated into the 2050 plan right now. And I mentioned those needs assessments because we're at the cusp of getting ready for some agency coordination meetings to talk about our state highway system needs assessment. So for a little background on this process, began with the 2045 State Highway Systems Needs List to make sure that the projects that were listed there were still relevant to move forward to 2050, or if there were some tweaks that needed to be made. And then we've also developed some interim 2050 traffic forecasts and estimations to help us identify anything that's new for 2050 that we need to add to our horizon. See if there's any new problems that arise that need to be addressed. So I mentioned those coordination meetings. We're going to be reaching out directly to your staff and FDOT to be able to work one-on-one on the draft State Highway Systems Needs List to refine that together. and come back with a second draft for you all to look at later on this year. And when I talk about needs assessments, I almost always get questions about funding immediately after, so let's just talk about it. We are working on the financial resources and revenue forecasting element of the MTP right now. And just as a reminder, the MTP is required to be fiscally constrained. So this is a very important element of our long-range planning process. And this task will involve the assessment of financial resources that may be used to fund transportation improvements through 2050, our planning your horizon. This includes looking at federal, state, local, private, or other discretionary sources that could potentially be used for those transportation improvements. More information about this will be presented as it gets a little more developed later this year. And then we did have a technical workshop back on June 13th. So if you want more information about our transit vision element results, a preview of what that's going to be published as fairly soon, this is the place to see it, as well as an overview of our freight planning approach if you want more information about those two specific topics. But the refinement of indicators is the topic that we're going to discuss today, so I won't review that one. But if you do want to follow along as we talk through our indicators discussion today, at each of your places, you should have a handout of the latest draft indicators as they're being proposed now. And it was also included under tab 4 of your agendas. So I've kind of mentioned the indicators. These are specifically used as data points to measure progress towards achieving our goals and objectives. A lot of people then ask me, well, how do we implement these? That'll be our next step. So those are strategies for implementation. How do we achieve those goals and objectives and make sure we're hitting our indicator targets? So strategies will come after we've finalized our indicators as well. So as a reminder, our 2050 MTP goals are summarized into 5 key areas, and you'll see that we've highlighted each of those indicators on your handout to say where those indicators match up with the goals. And we talked about how these goals are interconnected. We saw that become even more interwoven when we talked about objectives. And today you'll see several indicators that align with 2, 3, multiple goal areas. And that's done purposefully because we're all working towards achieving one consolidated vision of what transportation will look like in 2050. So as we go through, again, a reminder, those indicators are intended to be measurable and indicative of the future of transportation within our region. Now, while we're showing them all here, as we refine these together over the next few weeks, we are potentially going to be tying some of those directly to our federal performance measures or proposing new specific ones purely for our MPO. They may be used for prioritization criteria down the line, and they may also be used for annual reporting and tracking purposes through our Tracking the Trends program. We're looking at how we're evaluating, preparing for each of these future trends that we talked about in the other report earlier. And then those specific indicators, we want to make sure they are specific, measurable, that the data that we're using is updated regularly or regularly available reliably, so we can always use it as that benchmark. And we're trying to make sure that these are understandable to the public. So if you have any thoughts on those as we review those today, please let me know. So that's a lot of build up to then walk through each of our goal areas. So starting with safety, providing a safe and secure transportation system for all users. We're proposing 5 indicators for this particular category, which generally flow along the lines of the number and rate of fatalities, serious injuries, crashes from multiple different perspectives and different viewpoints and lenses. Then looking at the average clearance times for incidents, as well as average emergency response and notification times by incident occurrence. Going into our second goal area, reliability. This is to provide a reliable transportation system across all modes for people and freight. And there are 7 indicators proposed under this goal area. And these range from metrics on the infrastructure condition to level of travel time reliability, again, from multiple perspectives and lenses, as well as looking at transit conditions. For connectivity, this is to enhance lives through improved access to jobs and services for people of all ages and abilities. There are 6 indicators proposed under this category, including transit operations, the percent of jobs and essential services accessible via different modes of travel, as well as average person trip distance. For community, this is to enhance the health and vitality of our region's communities and environments. And we have 7 proposed indicators under this goal area. This includes miles of active transportation facilities, rates of asthma, obesity, or diabetes throughout the region, as well as emissions. And I did receive one question about one of these indicators before the meeting today. It is the miles of publicly owned and maintained transportation infrastructure within wetlands or the 100-year floodplain. So that wording is a little confusing out of context. So this is intended to track the encroachment of any public infrastructure built within these in wetlands or floodplain areas, knowing that this could be environmentally sensitive or there could be more impacts to stormwater later on. So we're trying to minimize and mitigate any impacts upon the environment from our continued growth in the region. And then our last goal area is prosperity, strengthening our region's economy. We have 7 indicators proposed under this category as well. This includes looking at freight values by mode, access to jobs, affordable housing units available per capita, as well as looking at transportation and housing costs as a percentage of household income. I know we do have some time for questions today. We went through that fairly quickly. But if you do have any questions or suggestions after today's meeting, I ask that you reach out to myself, Sarah Larson, or respond to our indicator survey, which was included as a link in your agenda packets as well. Responses to that are requested by July 12th. So with that, thank you for your time this morning. Does anyone have any questions?
I do have 2, if you don't mind, if you would entertain, please.
Commissioner Guthrie.
So I think back when you had about maybe a plan for emissions. Can you speak on that? I mean, kind of that's easy to say, but what is kind of the thought around that? I mean, is that going to the government and, and saying, listen, it's our goal to get emissions to this point? I mean, how would you go about that?
So right now we're talking about just the elements that we want to continue tracking moving forward. So Ms. Larson already compiles that information through the air quality reports. So that is a metric that we're intending to continue with.
And Taylor, actually, I can speak a little bit more to that. Excuse me. So we've also recently completed our ozone contingency plan and carbon reduction strategy. And within that, we looked at 27 different strategies that locals and our partners could potentially adopt. And we also brought them forward in a public opinion or a public meeting to see how people felt about them. It is by no means prescriptive or saying, oh, you must do this, just looking at 27 best practices that are happening across the country. And so we included that in that study. And it's very technical. The University of Central Florida did that with us. So we had some really great minds working on that, but it's quite technical, but we're happy to share that. We're in the process of synthesizing it and making it much more public friendly to make it much more accessible. And that will be integrated into the MTP as the specific emissions portion.
Wow, 27, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Alternatives, that's good. And then my last question really is, I know there was something, provide transportation solutions that enhance natural and built environments. Kind of my thought is anytime you put a road through a protective environment or anything, any place like that, that's just going to create the chances for homes and, and for developers to come in and make, say, hey, listen, this land, we need to buy it, or, blah, 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 whatever. So talk to that. How do you provide transportation solutions that would enhance nature?
So in terms of the Metro Plan Orlando funded projects, the vast majority that we do are within already disturbed areas. So already pre-built out areas, and even more projects are limited to those within the existing right-of-way. So that's looking at minimizing or completely eliminating any impacts to the natural environment, specifically is kind of a way that we do business. In terms of enhancing the environment, I think there are opportunities within projects, again, on a case-by-case basis, where it could be enhancing access or providing improvements in terms of stormwater retention or drainage to be able to make sure that things are flowing more naturally than they may have been in the past.
Oh, great. And like that water treatment and everything would be like like you're saying, a natural, wetlands area or something you would create, correct?
I believe there's
Prime-
always opportunities
The
for that.
prime
as part of
example
projects.
would be what they've done on the Wakata Parkway.
Yeah, so I was just thinking. All right, Commissioner Kennedy.
Just a quick question. When you were giving the quantities of the goal indicators, your numbers were less than the numbers on the handout. Is there a subset of those or?
I used the numbering from the draft document that's available on our website. So when we write it out in a report style, I can't list them 6 different times under each goal area where they best fit. So the numbers are where they land in the final or in the draft report that's available online for review at this time. So what you're seeing in the handout is every goal area where we believe that that particular indicator applies to show the interconnected nature of each of these proposed indicators. Mhm.
All right, any others? Thanks so much. All right, we have which we all care about, congestion management process. And we have Laura, is it Bauk? Is that correct? Book?
That's correct. Bauk,
Bauk.
you're right.
Welcome, Ms.
Yes.
Bauk.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm Laura Bauk, I'm staff, and I'm going to be providing an overview of what we're doing to update our congestion management process. So I want to start out with a little bit of table setting, talk about what it is we mean when we talk about congestion management. Simply put, it's applying strategies to improve and optimize the performance and reliability on the transportation system, with some nuance in that when we talk about congestion, there are generally 2 sort of broad types of congestion that we think about. The first is recurring congestion, and that's going to be where you see congestion that's occurring at roughly the same times and in the same areas on the system every day or every weekday. Generally, recurring congestion is caused by high traffic volumes on roadways that are either at or approaching capacity. Then the other broad type of congestion is non-recurring, so it's unexpected, atypical. The sorts of things that contribute to non-recurring congestion include things like traffic crashes or major special events, like if there's a special event at the Amway Center, as a for instance. So when we think about strategies, we have to think about strategies that address both types of congestion. So then moving into what we are talking about when we think through a congestion management process or a CMP, that's really just a systematic approach to congestion management that provides up-to-date and accurate information on how the system is performing. And it's really to think through how we are making our decisions about funding investments to make sure that the strategies that we're applying are really focused on the outcomes that we want to see in the congestion space. I will note that most of the strategies that we end up defining in a congestion management process tend to be maybe shorter term, technology-based, or those TISMO solutions that we think about. So congestion management first sort of showed up in legislation in 1991 as a part of the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act that required the development of a congestion management system. And then moving ahead a couple of bills later, in 2005 with Safety Lou, that replaced the congestion management system with the congestion management process. The major difference there being that the congestion management system was supposed to be sort of a snapshot in time look at how the system was performing, whereas a congestion management process is something that's a sort of a living document, is updated continually to think about how goals or objectives for a community may be changing around congestion, if there are new concerns surrounding congestion that we need to address. And then of course, it provides that flexibility to be able to update the strategies you're pursuing to make sure that you're moving towards your performance targets. So why do we do a CMP? Every MPO with a population of 200,000 people or more is required to develop a congestion management process. However, the federal guidance is not prescriptive about either the approach to developing a CMP or the timeframe within which you need to update it. So here at Metro Plan Orlando, we generally update our CMP every 5 years, roughly on the same schedule as our MTP updates. And that's for 2 reasons. First, to make sure that those goals and objectives that we're developing as part of our long-range planning can be reflected in the CMP. And you'll see how that fits in a little bit later. And then the second reason we do that is so that the strategies that we're recommending that are coming out of the CMP, we can include for consideration into the MTP. There is no requirement that those recommended strategies go into the MTP. As I mentioned, some of them may be shorter term, things that can be accomplished or implemented through other means, but it does define or provide those strategies for incorporation in the MTP if we so choose. So I noted that there was no sort of prescriptive guidance on what we are required to do to develop a CMP. However, in 2015, FHWA did provide a primer that gives some overarching guidance that we tend to follow here. And so the steps that we look at are first defining what our goals and objectives are going to be from a congestion management standpoint. From there, we define what our study area is. Here at Metro Plan Orlando, it's just our 3-county planning area. We then identify our performance measures. Those are the metrics we're going to be tracking over time and evaluating to make sure that we're moving in the right direction on congestion management. And we also set targets for each of the measures. We then identify which strategies we're going to try and pursue to meet those targets. And then we develop some sort of monitoring and evaluation plan for the process itself. So that sort of concludes the portion that sets the table on what this congestion management process is and why we do it. The remaining slides for my presentation are just going to be a brief snapshot of what was included in our 2045 CMP update, and then what we're thinking through updating as we do our 2050 update. So in 2045, as is shown here, what we did for our CMP goals is essentially take the goals from our long-range planning effort from the 2045 MTP and carried those right into the CMP process. And those were our sort of guiding principles for how we defined our objectives and rolling out of those our performance measures and strategies. This is just a snapshot of some of the performance measures that are included in our 2045 CMP. As you can see here, there are performance measures associated with each of the 5 goal areas. And what we really tried to do was take a look at measures that both would impact congestion, things like how many crashes we're seeing on the system, how quickly we're clearing incidents off of our roadways, but then also looking at those measures that congestion may impact, things like air quality or delay on the system. For the strategies from the 2045 CMP, they were sort of in 3 broad buckets. The first were strategies that improve safety for all users on the system. The thinking there being that we would be able to help manage our non-recurring congestion with some of those strategies. The other 2 buckets were strategies that optimize our system capacity, and then strategies that shift single occupant vehicle trips over to other forms of travel. The idea being for those other 2 buckets that they could potentially address both recurring and non-recurring congestion. So for the 2050 update, we're really taking a look at everything. We are considering how we need to update our goals and objectives, performance measures, strategies, and we're developing a scorecard, and I'll talk about each of those in turn. Similar to what we did with our 2045 MTP, those goals that Taylor just went through in her presentation are really they're acting as our guiding principles as we develop our objectives for the CMP, and we'll be using the same goals as the MTP for our CMP this year. For the performance measures, we've just finished a bunch of data collection to take a look at how we are proceeding towards the performance targets that we identified in the 2045 MTP or 2045 CMP, pardon me. And I'll be reporting out on those at our next MTP technical workshop, which I'll talk about in a minute. But as we think about how we want to make changes to our performance measures, we are thinking about which measures we want to carry forward into the 2050 CMP and keep those there. Where we may want to look at some different data sources, either because the data is easier to collect or because we feel it may be a better representation of what we're trying to get at with that measure. And then in some cases, we'll be removing some of the performance measures just to sort of streamline the process and our evaluation plan. And then we're looking at some potential new performance measures to add to make sure that we're getting a real holistic view of how the system is performing. For our 2050 CMP strategies, sort of the same thing. We're considering which ones that we want to carry through. We've done a good accounting of which strategies, pardon me, that were recommended in the 2045 CMP have actually been implemented and how they sort of move the needle. And so we'll be thinking about which ones carry through, which we may want to drop, and if there are any new ones that we want to add in. And then a major piece of the CMP update this time is that we're developing a CMP scorecard. The idea there being that we would pick between 5 and 8 of the performance measures that provide like a good snapshot of how the system is performing, and include that in your committee packets, probably quarterly is what we're looking at right now. So we're developing that. And then in terms of next steps, in a couple of weeks, we have an internal staff workshop to talk through our preliminary recommendations for those CMP objectives, performance measures, and strategies, as well as to review that scorecard. And then we'll be taking the input that we get from staff, incorporating it into our recommendations, and then presenting it at the August 8th MTP technical workshop. So we'll be talking with your staff members and anyone that joins that call to get their input, and we'll be incorporating that input into our draft final CMP. And I anticipate being back in the fall to provide the recommendations for the 2050 CMP at that point. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions about congestion?
Everything's good.
We don't have any trouble with that.
I have a quick question
Commissioner
about when will the scorecards be available for us to start viewing quarterly next year, a couple of years?
Yeah, this gets adopted with this. It's a good question. We have not gotten there yet, but.
Yeah, we typically, sorry.
Go ahead, Kimona.
We typically adopt the congestion management process through the same adopting resolution as the MTP, given that the goals, objectives, strategies kind of are seamless in nature. So a lot of the work will be done similar to the MTP. As soon as the work is complete, it's going to flow out naturally. We're not going to kind of hold it back if it's ready for public consumption. But when it will be formally adopted, will be at the same time as the MTP, the long range plan, which will be in December of 25.
Let me jump in. That said, most of the performance measures that are included in the CMP are part of the tracking the trends that Slate updates all the time. So if you want to get those snapshots sort of ongoing, you can go to tracking the trends and see them there. But for the pretty sort of one-page scorecard, it'll likely be after the 2025 adoption. You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right, thanks so much. All right, we're kind of concluding a little bit here. We have several items under general information on tab 4 in your agenda packets. Upcoming meetings, the next Metro Plan Orlando Governing Board meeting is here next week, Wednesday, July 10th at 9 a.m. I thought we were meeting earlier than that.
Sorry, that's my mistake. It's 8 a.m.
It's 8 a.m. Okay. So 8 a.m.
September 5th.
That's July 10th for the governing board. The next MAC meeting is September 5th at 9:30. At this time, do we have any committee members who would like to make any final comments, questions?
So everybody has a great Independence Day.
Yes. Anyone else? Yes. Happy 4th.
Yeah.
Also, now, do we have any members of the public wish to comment? Please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone joining us virtually?
No hands raised online, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And do we have any members of the public attending? We have any?
Have not received
Nope.
any.
And any written comments?
There are none.
All right. At this time, there's no further business and our meeting is adjourned. 30, an hour, just under an hour. All right. Have a great July 4th, everyone.